You wake up to a strange silence, the kind that feels wrong, like something has been ripped from the fabric of reality. No sirens, no traffic, no news anchors, no government announcements. You reach for your phone, but there are no updates from your government's emergency channels. No updates at all. Every official account, from the presidents to your city mayors, has gone dark. You open the window, expecting a normal morning. Instead, you see people flooding the streets, screaming, looting, burning. A banner flutters from a high-rise building. We are free now. Across every media feed, a single chilling headline dominates. All world governments have ceased to exist. No elections, no presidents, no armies, no police, no laws. Not a single official remains in power. It is not a coup. It is not a war. It is not even a natural disaster. It is simply, inexplicably, the end of rule. Overnight, authority itself has vanished, and within minutes, the world you knew turns into something unrecognizable. You are no longer a citizen. You are now prey. But you are not just a witness to this nightmare. You are something else entirely. A traveler sent from a distant future to observe the death of civilization itself. You were chosen because you are not from this world. You are a temporal historian, a covert observer from a timeline where order still exists. You are embedded with artificial memories to blend into this society. But your real purpose is to document how and why this world failed. The year is 2033, a time when the world had become saturated with disillusionment, where trust in leaders had reached a breaking point. Across every nation, people demanded total freedom. Protests turned to revolutions. Revolutions turned to abandonments. And then, with one coordinated digital trigger, every remaining structure of power was brought down. Governments were dismantled by insiders. Laws deleted from cloud servers. Police forces disbanded. And military arsenals were either looted or left rotting. There was no war because there was no one left to fight for any side. What remained was a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushed chaos. Your mission is to record what happens in the wake of that collapse. You will walk among the ruins of society, invisible to the people around you, immune to the disease of anarchy that now infects every corner of the earth. You are here to see why humanity, without structure, cannot survive. You are not allowed to interfere. But the more you see, the harder it becomes to stay silent. Because, as civilization dies in real time, the question burns inside your mind. What if this future is not far away? What if it begins tomorrow? Your first destination is the city center, where, only hours after the fall, freedom has already begun to taste like fire and blood. The streets you once walked with headphones on and a coffee in hand are no longer safe. They are not even recognizable. Asphalt is ripped apart by burning cars flipped on their sides. Office buildings are riddled with shattered glass, their lobbies looted and graffitied with desperate warnings. People scream, not for help, but in rage, in confusion, in madness. Sirens are silent because there is no one left to sound them. Fire stations are empty. Police precincts are either abandoned or turned into makeshift bunkers for those bold enough to claim them. The city has not just collapsed, it has erupted into a living nightmare of primal instinct and unchecked survival. You are standing in what used to be a financial district, once a symbol of stability and ambition. Now, its skyscrapers are gutted like rotting carcasses, with fires burning through broken windows. Looters rush in and out of high-end stores, carrying TVs, laptops, bags of luxury clothing, and weapons. Not because they need them, but because they can. There is no punishment, no consequence. When the systems of justice evaporated, so did the illusion that most people were naturally moral. You see a man dragged into the middle of the street by a mob. He stole food from another group. There is no trial, no questions. They beat him until he stops moving. His body is left in the open, stripped bare. The people move on like wolves, leaving the bones of a meal. The subway is no longer transportation. It is a trap. Refugees from across the city have descended underground in the hope of shelter, but the darkness below holds new horrors. Gang initiations take place on blood-slick platforms. Entire families try to barricade themselves behind vending machines, but the walls provide little protection when rival factions storm in looking for territory. Without electricity, the trains are frozen. The only light comes from torches made from torn clothing and gasoline. Every tunnel echoes with screams, metal clanging, and the low growl of desperation. No one sleeps because sleep is a death sentence. On the surface, neighborhoods have formed armed perimeters. Residents once bonded by community Facebook groups now carry rifles and machetes, turning their cul-de-sacs into checkpoints. If you are a stranger, you are a threat. If you are unarmed, you are a target. Entire blocks have been barricaded with trash cans, stolen fences, and burned cars. You see flags rising, not of countries, but of ideologies. Some claim to stand for liberty, others for power, others for vengeance. What they all share is that none of them trust each other. Paranoia spreads faster than disease. Murders over food, water, or even suspicion happen every hour. You cannot call for help. There is no help to call. Highways are graveyards. Vehicles abandoned mid-flight now rust in place, covered in blood and ash. Families who tried to flee the cities were intercepted by roaming militias. Some were robbed, others were recruited at gunpoint. Most were never seen again. You walk past the wreckage of a school bus filled with children. The windows are blackened with soot. Inside, charred skeletons are strapped to melted seats. A message is spray-painted on the side in red. No more future. The air stings with smoke and decay. The further you travel into the inner city, the less it feels like Earth. It is as if you have slipped into an alternate reality where every rule of civilization has been inverted. Digital systems have imploded. Without regulation or leadership, the internet has become a raw stream of chaos. Fake news, conspiracy theories, and black market exchanges flood every channel. Private surveillance drones buzz overhead, each controlled by whoever managed to hack them first. They are no longer tools of safety, but weapons of control. You pass by a rooftop where a man is broadcasting himself live. He is executing prisoners from a rival group. Thousands are watching. Thousands are commenting with hearts, laughing emojis, and bets on who will die next. With no one to moderate, cruelty becomes entertainment. Medical emergencies are ignored. A woman lies on the sidewalk, convulsing, her mouth foaming, her hands outstretched for anyone to stop and help. People step over her. One man takes the opportunity to steal her shoes while she still breathes. When she finally stops moving, no one notices. She becomes part of the scenery. You try to move past, but her eyes lock with yours before they fade. In that moment, you feel the weight of every death that no longer matters. You want to help, but your mission forbids it. You are a time traveler, not a savior. Every second you spend here is a reminder that without rules, people do not rise, they fall. Night arrives fast in this new world, not just because the power grid is gone, but because the fear is heavier when the sun goes down. Fires replace streetlights, screams replace sirens. The city transforms into a battlefield of whispers and gunshots. Sleep is rare, even among the most armed. Fear keeps them awake. You find shelter in a hotel, or what used to be one. Its grand lobby is now a refugee camp, crawling with desperate faces. Mothers cradle crying infants. Elderly men sit in corners, wide-eyed, clutching whatever they can as weapons. There are no leaders, only survivors. A child asks you if the government is ever coming back. When you shake your head, he does not cry. He just nods like he already knew. You slip away before dawn. You cannot stay. You have seen the opening chapter of what happens when governance disappears. The assumption that people would come together in unity has shattered. Without consequence, people do not become heroes. They become monsters. This is not a future where you will build a new society. This is not a future where you will form utopias. This is a future where you will bleed, and no one will remember your name. As the cities burn behind you, you travel farther out into the country, searching for refuge. But what you find instead is that civilization's collapse is not just urban, it is everywhere. Without rules, even the most vital systems cannot survive. You leave the city ruins behind, hoping that the chaos was isolated, that perhaps rural areas had fared better. But as you cross the scarred highways and pass through towns that once held steady under the illusion of peace, you begin to see a far more chilling truth. The collapse of governance did not just take law with it. It took the invisible systems that held modern life together. Power grids, water treatment, transportation networks, waste management, agriculture, logistics, all the veins of civilization have dried up. Now, what was once automatic has become impossible. And without those systems, survival is not a matter of grit, it is a matter of time. The first sign is the silence of the lights. From sprawling metropolises to remote farming towns, darkness has become the norm. Power stations, once coordinated through regional regulatory boards and monitored around the clock, are now ghost zones, with no technicians to maintain the turbines and no overseers to coordinate grid load. The circuits burned out one by one. Some were sabotaged, others failed through sheer neglect. You pass an energy hub surrounded by razor wire and rusted signs reading "No nitrogen monoxide entry federal property." Now, it is just a husk. Inside, control panels blink erratically. Machines groan with unattended pressure. It hums like a dying animal. Then it goes silent. In a nearby neighborhood, you enter a row of homes now abandoned. Inside each one, the scene is the same. Rotten food pools in open fridges, toilets overflow with untreated sewage, and dry taps mock thirsty hands. Entire families fled when the water stopped. Others stayed too long, hoping it would return. Their remains sit in living rooms and bedrooms, sometimes curled up in each other's arms, surrounded by makeshift buckets and empty water bottles. What killed them was not violence, but dehydration. In a world without rules, water, once taken for granted, becomes more precious than gold. You make your way to a dam once hailed as a feat of engineering. Its gates are stuck open. gushing, uncontrolled torrents that flood downstream settlements. Emergency controls have been stripped, generators stolen. Local militia now occupies the outer perimeter, selling access to the reservoir at gunpoint. One bottle costs a week's worth of food, if you even have it. There is no oversight, no regulation, no ethics, just desperation and negotiation with loaded weapons. You witness a man offer up his daughter for water. The guards laugh and walk away. The girl cries. The man drinks alone. Food scarcity is even worse. Supply chains, dependent on synchronized shipping, customs, cold storage, and distribution networks, were not designed to survive anarchy. The moment government oversight disappeared, so did the order that kept trucks moving, planes flying, ships docking. Farmers abandoned their fields when fertilizer deliveries stopped, or when hungry mobs stormed their land. Cattle were slaughtered in panicked waves. Storage facilities were raided. Grain silos burned. You walk into a suburban grocery store stripped bare. Cans, boxes, bags, all gone. Only broken glass and streaks of blood remain. In the back, a young woman clutches a can of peas like it is a miracle. Her eyes are hollow. Her knuckles are white. She does not speak. She does not need to. You witness people boiling tree bark and weeds into bitter teas. They gnaw on roots, chew leather, try to digest anything remotely edible. The stench of malnutrition clings to the air. Corpses with bloated bellies litter alleyways. Once wealthy suburbs now echo with the same cries as inner cities, the cries of children who do not understand why their stomachs scream, but their parents have no answer. You enter a gated community where the wealthy tried to hold out with stockpiles and private security, but without steady supplies, even the rich could not insulate themselves. Their walls were scaled. Their guards betrayed them. In one mansion, a long banquet table sits untouched, surrounded by the bodies of a family who chose poison over starvation. Hospitals have become morgues. Emergency rooms are filled with rotting patients. There are no nurses, no power for ventilators, no antibiotics, no refrigeration. You see surgeons trying to operate with flashlights strapped to their heads, sawing through flesh without anesthesia. Patients scream until they pass out or do not wake up. The smell is unbearable. Blood, rot, antiseptic, and despair. Most hospitals are now abandoned. Some were looted for drugs. Others were burned after gangs took control. You find one clinic where the staff still remained, trying to help. They are now dead. A sign on the wall reads, "We did what we could. Even the dead are not buried." Cemeteries overflow. Funerals are a luxury no one can afford. Bodies are dumped into mass graves or left to rot in houses and streets. Disease spreads. Rats grow bolder. Flies coat everything. The air carries the scent of death, and with it, a quiet realization settles in. Humanity's strength was never in its freedom. It was in its systems, and without rules, those systems collapse. The machines that filtered water, the trucks that carried food, the power that kept your family warm at night, none of them ran on wishes. They ran on coordination, on trust, on laws. Now, without those laws, everything you depended on has turned to ash. In the distance, you see a power plant erupt into flames. A gas leak, likely triggered by looters scavenging copper or fuel. The fire reaches into the sky like a signal flare for the end of civilization. There is no fire brigade to stop it, no helicopter to contain it. It burns for days, coating the sky in black soot. Nearby towns suffocate under the haze. Elderly residents choke in their sleep. Infants stop breathing. Asthma attacks go untreated. The smoke carries tiny pieces of metal and plastic from melted infrastructure. You breathe it in. You can taste the end. And then there are the water wars. Rivers become battlegrounds. Lakes are seized by armed groups who build fortresses along the shorelines. People with boats guard them like kings of their own aquatic kingdoms. Purification tablets become currency. Storm drains are filtered with makeshift contraptions. People drink from mud puddles. You witness an entire village poisoned by runoff from an old chemical plant, once regulated by government inspections, now left unchecked. Half the children die in a single night. No one takes responsibility. There is no one left to blame. Only silence. You find a woman digging in the ground with her hands, crying as she tries to plant a few seeds. She does not know how to farm. She worked in marketing. She watched videos on survival gardening, but cannot remember how to make compost. Her fingers bleed. Her plants die. She dies weeks later, found curled beside her failed garden. You see her story replayed across every region. People with modern educations and urban jobs cannot return to ancient skills. They were never taught to. They never needed to. But now, with the collapse of everything they once relied on, they are stranded in a world that punishes weakness with death. The collapse is not cinematic. It is not sudden. It is slow, grinding, humiliating. It strips people layer by layer until they are nothing but creatures chasing calories. There is no heroic struggle, only a decaying whimper from a species that once thought it had conquered the earth. You realize now, the greatest illusion was that government was a cage. In truth, it was the structure that held back the flood. Without it, even the basics of life become unsustainable. But as resources vanish and starvation tightens its grip, something even darker begins to surface. Human nature unbound. With no rules left, violence becomes the new law, and morality becomes a memory. You hear it long before you see it. The dull thud of fists against flesh, the sharp crack of gunfire in the distance, the screams that never stop as you cross into what was once a peaceful residential suburb. The transformation is complete. The lawns are overgrown, the mailboxes rusted shut, but the people here have adapted, not through cooperation, but through conquest. This is a place ruled not by agreements, but by force. Violence is no longer an act of desperation. It is a form of communication, of negotiation, of status. Without police, without courts, without consequences, every human interaction is now defined by power and fear. The streets are patrolled not by peacekeepers, but by armed groups in makeshift uniforms, each one bearing crude symbols painted on jackets or carved into the metal of their weapons. You are stopped at a checkpoint, not by soldiers, but by teenagers with rifles. They demand to see your bag. They take what they want. There is no debate, no receipt, no promise of safety. You comply or you bleed. Around you, the remains of what was once a neighborhood echo with the signs of combat. Bullet holes pierce garage doors. Charred skeletons of cars block intersections. Children carry knives in plain view. They do not play, they train. In this world, violence is currency. It buys safety, it secures territory, it wins food and water. The more brutal you are, the more respected you become. You watch a man with a bloodied baseball bat being carried on the shoulders of his group after slaughtering a rival leader. They cheer as if he won a championship. Someone paints his face on a nearby wall, his name scrawled in bold strokes. He is a celebrity now because he killed faster and harder than the last one. You see women forced into servitude as prizes of war. There are no rules here, only winners and corpses. Every building is a fortress, every glance a potential threat. You do not make eye contact unless you are prepared to fight. You pass a supermarket that has been turned into a gladiator arena. The shelves are cleared, the aisles flooded with cheering spectators. In the center, two men are locked in combat, barehanded, while a ring of spectators watches and places bets. The prize, a gallon of clean water and a protein bar. One fighter collapses, his skull cracked open by a concrete block. The crowd erupts. The victor limps away, dragging his reward behind him. There is no medical aid, no celebration of honor. This is not about survival. This is about dominance. And dominance is the only path to safety now. Technology is weaponized in terrifying ways. Drones equipped with crude explosives fly overhead, launched by scavengers who hacked them using old phones and laptops. Surveillance cameras now serve only those who control them, broadcasting acts of brutality like games to distant watchers. In one district, you witness a woman tied to a pole with a sign reading, "Thief." Her hands are broken, her clothes torn, and no one moves to help her. This is justice now, immediate, public, and irreversible. There is no appeal, no evidence, only accusation and punishment. Even language has changed. People no longer speak of fairness or ethics. They speak of strength, loyalty, obedience. The old words, compassion, empathy, equality, are treated as weaknesses. You listen to a group of youths discussing a nearby raid. One boasts about shooting a father in front of his son because it sent a message. Another laughs as he describes setting fire to a refugee tent just to watch people run. These are not sociopaths. They are survivors shaped by the world they live in. A world that rewards cruelty and punishes hesitation. Weapons are everywhere. Guns, blades, hammers, chains, anything that can cause harm is carried with pride. Ammunition is traded like currency. You see a man sharpening rebar into spears, handing them out in exchange for scraps of food. People build their own traps, line their homes with tripwires and spikes, dig pits in backyards to catch intruders. Children are taught to aim before they learn to read. Schools are now bunkers. Teachers, if they exist, also act as enforcers. There is no curriculum, only survival drills. And then there are the warlords, the ones who rose quickly by crushing everyone in their path. Some used to be criminals, others former military. A few were simply ruthless civilians who realized the game had changed. You hear their names whispered in fear, spoken with reverence. They command small armies, often more organized than anything left behind by the fallen governments. One of them controls an entire downtown district with drones, snipers, and psychological warfare. He has a rule: no one speaks louder than a whisper after dark. Break it, and you vanish. His followers patrol in silence, faces covered, radios crackling with coded language. He calls himself order, and in a sick twist, his brutality has brought a twisted form of peace to his territory. Peace enforced by terror. You are forced to take shelter in an abandoned daycare center for the night. Inside, tiny chairs and faded storybooks remain untouched. Blood stains the floor near a door that was clearly kicked in. You barricade yourself in a storage closet, breathing shallowly as a gunfight erupts nearby. Outside, you hear boots stomping, voices shouting, glass breaking, and then a cry, not of pain, but of triumph. Someone has won, someone else is gone. You stay hidden until sunrise. When you finally emerge, you see a new mural on the daycare's exterior wall, a painted skull crowned with flames. A new gang has claimed the area. Their rule begins now. There are no universal laws left. Every block, every street corner has its own rules. What is allowed in one district gets you executed in another. One gang bans cigarettes. Another demands tribute every sunrise. A third insists on strict curfews. Break a rule and you are punished. Not with fines, not with jail time, but with disfigurement, branding, torture. You pass a man who has had his tongue cut out for speaking without permission. Another who walks on crutches after having his legs broken for trespassing. You want to believe there is still some shred of decency left in this world. But every step reminds you that violence is the only law now, and every kindness is met with suspicion or betrayal. No one trusts anyone, not friends, not family, not even lovers. The betrayal rate is high. Food is hoarded, alliances are temporary, and people turn on each other over rumors. A mother is seen dragging her wounded son into an alley after he is shot during a food raid. Moments later, she emerges alone, holding 2 cans and a pistol. She lies when asked what happened. No one presses further. Survival justifies anything, even the unthinkable. And still, there are those who resist. People who try to build havens, to defend pockets of safety with non-violence. But without enforcement, these places rarely last. You visit one such sanctuary hidden in an old library. Its founders taught self-defense, shared food, banned weapons inside. For a moment, it feels like hope, but then it is found. A group of raiders descends at dusk. No one survives. Books are burned, supplies are taken, and the building is turned into a new base for the victorious. The message is clear. Peace is weakness, and weakness is fatal. As the sun sets again, you find yourself standing atop a building, looking out over a city of chaos. Gunshots echo like fireworks. Fires burn in clusters. Drones buzz past your head. There is no peace to return to, not in this timeline. The descent into violence has become the new normal, and you are only on day 6 of this journey. You realize now this world has no room for hesitation. You either adapt to its cruelty or become its next victim. But as violence becomes the backbone of society, something else is breaking. Relationships, families, and the very trust that once bound humans together. Your next stop reveals how quickly love decays when fear and hunger become law. You once believed the last thing to break would be the bonds of family. That even in the absence of law, people would cling to the ones they love. That even if cities burned and systems failed, human connection would be the thread holding civilization together. You were wrong. In this world, without rules or governance, even trust has become dangerous. Love, once a refuge, is now a liability. Family is a weakness that gets people killed, and loyalty is a luxury no one can afford. You begin to see it unravel, not with gunfire, but in glances, in the way people eye each other across flickering fires, suspicious of every movement. In the way fathers grip their rifles tighter when their teenage sons come too close. In the whispered arguments between siblings over food, the way couples sleep facing opposite directions, knives tucked beneath their pillows. The social fabric of humanity is not tearing at the seams. It has already split, and now the threads whip wildly in the wind, striking anyone foolish enough to try to hold them. You witness the breakdown in a community once praised for its unity. Neighbors who held block parties now build walls between their properties. A man who once handed out cookies on Halloween now uses a chainsaw to guard his driveway. A single rumor is enough to cause a breakdown. One child is accused of stealing supplies from another's family. Within hours, both households are gone. One slaughtered in the night, the other vanished in fear. There are no investigations, no reconciliations, only escalation. Trust becomes the rarest resource and the first to expire. In a once bustling apartment building, you find what looks like a functioning micro-community. Dozens of people share cooking duties, rotate watch shifts, ration their supplies with a system. At first glance, it looks like hope, but as you spend the night hidden among them, you see the cracks. Arguments erupt over fairness, accusations of hoarding, paranoia about outsiders. A mother is accused of poisoning the food after her child dies of infection. She is dragged to the rooftop and thrown off. No trial, no defense, just suspicion and rage. The group continues, pretending the decision was necessary. But the next morning, 4 more residents have vanished with all the medicine. The cycle repeats. Parents now teach their children not about kindness, but about betrayal. They are instructed never to speak of supplies, never to reveal where they sleep, never to trust a smile. You overhear one father telling his daughter, "If I die, do not cry." Crying shows weakness. The girl nods. She cannot be more than 6 years old. Her eyes are empty. You meet teenagers who have grown up in this collapse, who have never known peace. Their idea of loyalty is tied not to love, but to protection. They do not ask, "Do you care for me?" They ask, "Would you kill for me?" If the answer is no, they walk away. Romantic relationships, too, have eroded. Without trust, without safety, intimacy becomes a battlefield. Some couples survive by forming contracts, literal agreements written in blood, dividing resources, outlining betrayals, threatening punishment if one flees. Others simply fall apart. You find the remnants of a love letter scrawled on the wall of a burned house. "I'm sorry, I needed to eat." That is all it says. No names, no explanation, just the brutal simplicity of desperation. In a nearby shack, you see a couple who took poison together. Their hands are still clasped. Perhaps they knew that their love could not survive the world outside their door. Communities that once thrived on culture and cooperation now descend into tribalism. Ethnic groups fragment, religious enclaves turn militant. Language itself becomes a barrier. You encounter a group that kills anyone who cannot speak their dialect. Another insists on purity tests. Only those born within a specific geographic region are allowed to stay. You try to speak with a woman guarding a checkpoint. She says nothing, just stares, fingers on the trigger. Her silence is not apathy, it is armor. Friendships are severed for survival. 2 men who were childhood best friends fight over a crate of canned goods. One of them shoots first. Later, you see him sobbing over the body. He whispers apologies between mouthfuls of beans. In this world, grief is not enough to stop the next betrayal. People learn quickly. If you care, you hesitate. If you hesitate, you die. So they stop caring. You stumble upon a refugee camp built inside a crumbling stadium. Hundreds of people, mostly strangers, gathered under the promise of cooperation. At first, it worked, but as resources dwindled, factions formed. A woman was accused of hiding food in her jacket. She was stripped, beaten, and left outside the gates. She died of exposure. It turned out the bulge was her infant son. By the time someone realized, it was too late. No one took responsibility. Everyone blamed someone else. Now, each person sleeps with their back to the wall, eyes on the others. Some say the stadium is safer than the outside, but every night someone disappears. Even pets are not spared. You see a boy forced to kill his dog for food. He does it with tears streaming down his face, but no one offers comfort. Later, you watch him sitting alone, whispering to a bone. His mother tells him to stop, afraid others will see him as unstable. In this world, mental illness is a risk. Weakness of any kind is a red flag, and red flags are targets. You reach a farmhouse where an extended family tried to wait out the collapse together. Dozens of relatives across generations barricaded themselves inside, growing crops, collecting rainwater, sharing stories. They survived longer than most, but then arguments began over who worked hardest, who deserved the most food, who made decisions. Alliances formed along generational lines. One night, the youth staged a quiet coup. The elders were locked in the cellar. Weeks later, the cellar door is open. It is empty. The rest of the house is quiet. You find only one journal left behind. Its final entry reads, "As you leave the area, a small group waves you down. You are cautious, but they seem peaceful. They offer to share a meal cooked over a small fire. They speak kindly, laugh even. You feel a flicker of connection, of hope. Then, in the middle of the night, they are stealing your gear, your journal, your rations. One of them hesitates, apologizes. Another silences him with a punch. They do not kill you, but only because you were smart enough to hide your tracker. By sunrise, they are gone. The fire is out. Your ribs are bruised. Your hope is gone. What has decayed is not just civilization's rules. It is the core belief that others can be trusted. The unspoken social contract that once bound neighbors, families, friends, even strangers. It has disintegrated. Without law, without consequences, without structure, humanity has turned inward. Every relationship is now a negotiation between survival and betrayal. You cannot afford to love. You cannot afford to trust. In this world, the only person you can rely on is yourself, and even that grows harder by the day. But as trust dies and bonds shatter, a darker hunger begins to rise, one that leads people to search for meaning, for control, for gods among the ruins. What comes next is not government, not reason, but cults, tribalism, and madness masquerading as order. When governments vanish, and when survival no longer guarantees meaning, people do not simply fade into isolated chaos. They begin to reach for structure in new, twisted forms. In the absence of law, faith mutates. In the ruins of order, ideology festers. You see it first in the graffiti, symbols that do not belong to any known religion or nation, scrawled in red or black across crumbling walls and scorched storefronts. They are crude sigils, sometimes painted in blood, marking territory not by logic or geography, but by belief. These are not mere gangs. These are new tribes, cults, fractured philosophies, risen from ash and fear. Your journey takes you into a once sprawling suburban mall, now repurposed into a temple of sorts. The parking lot has been cleared and repainted into a giant eye symbol, dozens of feet across. Inside, mannequins hang from the ceiling like effigies. People kneel on shards of glass, chanting incoherently, while smoke pours from burning tires. At the center, a tall man in a robe, stitched from old flags, raises a machete over his head. He preaches not from a book, but from torn-out pages of survival manuals and political manifestos, woven together into a doctrine of madness. His followers repeat every word. When he raises his hand, they cheer. When he lowers it, they bow. You are witnessing the formation of a new religion, one born not from revelation, but from desperation. They call themselves the Obedient Flame. Their doctrine is simple. The world ended because people stopped obeying. So now, obedience is sacred. Doubt is punished. You watch as a woman is dragged into the open for questioning the leader's order. She is tied to a metal chair, doused in kerosene, and set on fire as the others sing. Her screams are not silenced. They are embraced as proof of devotion. You leave quietly, unnoticed, sick to your core. Outside the mall compound, others operate under different banners. One group, the Pure Ones, patrols the forests in white tunics made from bedsheets and bandages. They believe the collapse was caused by pollution of the body and soul. They drink only rainwater, eat only what they grow, and execute anyone with tattoos, piercings, or synthetic clothing. Their leader is a former nutritionist who now claims to be a prophet. He keeps his followers docile with fasting and ritualistic deprivation. You speak briefly with one of his disciples, a teenage girl missing her front teeth. She smiles as she tells you how the unclean were buried alive for their own purification. In the desert regions, a different cult has taken hold. They call themselves the Sovereign Dust. Their creed is built around fire and salt, worshiping the sun as a cleansing force. They scar their own skin with heated metal rods as a form of atonement. Their settlements are nomadic, moving in packs, destroying any structure they find. They believe buildings represent the old world and must be burned. You watch them torch a library, laughing as centuries of knowledge go up in flames. One of them dances through the smoke wearing a gas mask and a crown of nails. Their chants speak of rebirth through ruin. These factions are not anomalies. They are the new norm. Wherever you travel, you encounter belief systems born of trauma and enforced by terror. The cults serve a psychological purpose. They give people something to belong to, something to believe in when nothing else makes sense. But they are not harmless. They demand loyalty. They rewrite memory. They bend facts. You see a child forced to recite mantras while watching footage of public executions. She is told that the Great Silence, the day the governments fell, was not a tragedy, but a blessing. That law was sin, that freedom was poison. She nods and repeats. Her voice does not tremble. She is already lost. You enter a city stadium now turned into a stronghold by a group called the 9 Chains. Each member wears a metal chain with 9 links, symbolizing their founding commandments. The rules are brutal: obedience, loyalty, silence, punishment, sacrifice, strength, unity, isolation, and death. Break any, and you are punished in public. You witness one member accused of betrayal, forced to sever his own fingers, one by one, while chanting the group's creed. His screams echo off the empty bleachers. No one looks away. Discipline is pride here. There is no resistance, not anymore. People have learned that resistance without structure leads to nothing but blood and silence. So instead, they submit. They choose their masters, now carving identity from the ideologies that rose from rubble. You find that even in places not controlled by cults, tribal identities emerge. Some organize around former political parties, others around sports teams, zodiac signs, or social media hashtags. What once was entertainment or triviality is now the foundation of war. You see two groups in a valley fighting over control of a radio tower. Their uniforms are identical, but they differ in one belief. Who gets to speak into the microphone? Dozens die. The victor broadcasts static. Symbols are everywhere. Red triangles for one group, broken circles for another, painted hands, carved lightning bolts, upside-down flags. They mark territory like primitive cave art. They are warnings, but also declarations of meaning. You see a man beaten to death for wearing the wrong color bracelet. Another is skinned alive for refusing to kneel at a painted altar. These are not isolated incidents. These are rituals. They bind the tribe, solidify power, and create the illusion of control in a world that spun off its axis. You come across a group of former engineers who tried to start a rationalist enclave built on logic and evidence. They lasted 3 weeks. Their camp was overrun by a sect who believed technology was the mark of the beast. Their leaders smashed every piece of machinery with a sledgehammer, screaming about the ghosts of silicon. The engineers were given a choice: renounce electricity or die. They chose to die. Their bones now lie beneath the broken frame of a solar panel, and yet people continue to join. Why? Because the alternative is isolation, death alone in the dark. At least within the cults, there is order, there is ritual, there is community. Even if it is violent, even if it is delusional, it offers protection, it offers identity. You meet a man who joined the Red Womb, a group that believes Earth is pregnant with a new humanity. He tells you his name was once Jeff, but now he is called Spillborn. He smiles as he describes the purging ceremony he endured. His hands tremble. His smile does not reach his eyes. You realize now that human nature cannot tolerate the void. Where government once stood, where systems once ruled, new gods have emerged. Gods of pain, gods of hunger, gods of ideology. These cults are not growing smaller. They are multiplying, fragmenting, mutating, each one more extreme than the last. Each one a mirror of the madness inside humanity's desperate search for meaning. But even belief cannot save you from disease, injury, or time. And as healthcare vanishes and medicine fades into myth, the world becomes a place where every infection is a death sentence, and compassion becomes a luxury too dangerous to afford. It begins with a cough. Nothing violent, just a dry rasp echoing from somewhere in the crowd. It is the kind of sound that once warranted a glance, maybe a kind word, perhaps a trip to the pharmacy. But now it sparks fear. In this world, a cough is not a symptom. It is a warning flare. You watch the man cover his mouth with a rag, eyes darting. Around him, people step back. Some whisper, others simply leave. He is already marked, already judged. Within hours, he will be gone, either from the illness or from what others will do to him to prevent its spread. With no government, no hospitals, no logistics, and no regulated supply chains, medicine has become a forgotten language. Pharmacies are either empty or controlled by armed groups who sell expired antibiotics for weapons or sex. Hospitals are overrun ruins, morgues filled with the unburied, walls smeared with blood, tools rusting in place. You walk into what used to be a regional trauma center. Its halls smell of rot and disinfectant mixed with urine. A makeshift operation room has been set up in the cafeteria. A woman is being stitched together on a dinner table using dental floss and vodka. Her screams bounce off the tiles. There is no anesthesia, no clean tools, no aftercare. She will die by morning, if not from her wounds, then from infection. Diseases that were once considered trivial are now lethal. A child's scraped knee turns septic. A toothache becomes an abscess that spreads to the brain. A simple flu kills in days, and it spreads rapidly, unchecked, across filthy camps and broken neighborhoods where waste piles in the streets and clean water is scarce. You see people trying to make bandages out of curtains, boiling cloth to reuse. Old medical textbooks are passed around like sacred relics, their pages smudged with dirt and desperation. People memorize procedures without training, attempt surgeries by candlelight, and administer dosages by guesswork. Mistakes are constant. Lives are short. You meet a man who was once a paramedic. Now he carries a backpack of scavenged supplies and offers his help to those who can afford it. He no longer works out of morality. He works for trade. He treats a man's infected leg in exchange for bullets. The patient dies anyway, screaming for hours as the infection spreads. The paramedic says nothing. He moves on to the next, with no time to grieve, no capacity for sorrow. You ask him how many people he has helped. He shrugs, then, after a long silence, says, "None that stayed alive." Mental health is worse. Once treated by therapists, medication, support systems, and quiet care, the collapse of society has turned the mind into a battlefield with no medic in sight. You see a young woman wandering barefoot, muttering to herself. Her hands are covered in dried blood, her own, most likely. People ignore her, or worse, taunt her. One child throws a stone. She flinches, but does not react. She is beyond pain. In another town, a group of people build a cage and lock a man inside. He screams constantly, a deep, guttural wail that never stops. They call him the Howler. No one knows what is wrong with him. No one wants to. He is a symbol now, a warning to others of what happens when your mind breaks. The aged are particularly vulnerable. Without doctors, without caregivers, without regulated homes or support, the elderly are often left behind. You enter an abandoned apartment and find an old man curled beneath a pile of blankets. He is emaciated, his skin like parchment, his eyes too dry to produce tears. A photo of a family sits beside him. He does not speak. He does not move. He has been waiting for death for days, maybe weeks. You give him water. He tries to thank you, but his voice fails. He does not ask for help. He just holds your hand until he falls asleep. He never wakes up. Pregnancy is no longer a blessing. It is a death sentence. With no prenatal care, no painkillers, no sterile environments, childbirth has become a brutal ordeal. Many women die in labor. Many infants do not take their first breath. Those who survive are born into a world that cannot support them. You witness a birth in the back of a truck, the mother screaming as others hold her down, trying to deliver the baby with a rusted pair of scissors. When the child finally emerges, it is silent. The mother dies shortly after. The others move on, leaving the bodies behind. There is no time for mourning. Compassion, like medicine, is a resource most have run out of. You hear of a town where the sick are taken to a hill and left there. It is called the Quiet Slope. No one returns from it. You climb the hill one night and find dozens of makeshift graves, many not even covered. A few people still breathe, lying under plastic sheets or blankets, whispering to no one. Some beg for water. Some beg to be left alone. One reaches for your hand and says, "Tell them I didn't deserve this." You do not ask who them is. It does not matter. You have already learned that in this world, deserving means nothing. What remains of medicine has become a black market. Vaccines are myths. Painkillers are more valuable than gold. People grind up expired pills and snort them for relief. Some turn to superstition, crystals, chants, rituals, anything to give meaning to their suffering. A man slices open his arm and lets the blood drip into a bowl, convinced it will purge the fever. He collapses before anyone can stop him. Others create fake clinics, traps to lure the desperate. You meet a mother who traded her wedding ring for what she thought was penicillin. It was flour mixed with chalk. Her son died choking on his own lungs. Even attempts at compassion are punished. You witness a woman try to share her last meal with a stranger. Her group sees it as betrayal. That night, they leave her behind when they flee a raid. She is found the next morning, stripped, her hands cut off. The stranger she tried to feed is nowhere to be found. In this world, kindness is not rewarded. It is exploited. It is feared. You learn quickly that survival means hardening your heart until it feels nothing at all. And still, people try. A boy attempts to build a clinic from salvaged furniture and broken tools. He tapes notes to the walls, instructions on CPR and basic treatment. He helps an injured woman stop her bleeding with duct tape and a rag. She smiles. He smiles. For a moment, it feels like something sacred, but then a group of raiders find the place. They steal the supplies. They take the woman. They beat the boy and leave him unconscious. Days later, you return and find the walls burned, the notes ash. The boy is gone. Whether he lived or died, you will never know. You start to notice that people do not even say, "I'm sick" anymore. It is too dangerous. Illness marks you for abandonment, for execution. The weak are liabilities. You see people hiding injuries with rags, stuffing their mouths with cloth to muffle coughing fits. One man digs a bullet out of his thigh, alone, biting down on a belt, whispering prayers to a God he no longer believes in. He survives, but he walks with a limp that ensures he will not survive long. In a world where you must run, limp, and hide all at once, disability is a countdown. In the end, it is not just that healthcare has vanished. It is that the very idea of care has died. Empathy has become a luxury, sympathy a trap, and the instinct to help others a risk most can no longer take. People who were once doctors, nurses, therapists, caregivers have either gone silent, gone mad, or gone underground. What remains is a population slowly being consumed from the inside, untreated, unhealed, and unseen. But while the weak perish, a new generation is being born into this world of fire and ash. Children who have never known rules, never known kindness, never known structure, and they are not what you expect. They are the true product of this chaos, and their innocence has already died. They were born after the fall, after the governments vanished, after the schools collapsed, and after order was buried beneath gunfire and starvation. These children have never seen a police officer, never heard a school bell, never sat in a classroom, or walked through a clean hospital hallway. They were not taught how to be part of society. Because there is no society left to be part of, they do not know what a country is. They do not understand borders or laws or rights. They were raised among ash and silence, where screams echo louder than lullabies. And now they walk the same streets where civilization once stood. But they walk differently, without fear, without conscience, and without memory of what the world once was. You meet one of them in a collapsed supermarket. She cannot be older than 8, but her eyes have no softness. She carries a sharpened piece of metal in one hand and a stolen protein bar in the other. She watches you without blinking. When you take a step toward her, she steps back, not afraid, but calculating. Behind her, 2 younger children crouch beside a dead man, picking through his pockets. The girl speaks without emotion. "He tried to take our food." That is all she says. There is no guilt, no sadness, just the cold efficiency of someone who has already killed before. These children do not cry when others die. They do not flinch at blood. They do not look away from suffering. Pain is normal to them. Hunger is expected. Betrayal is assumed. Raised without nurturing, they have replaced empathy with instinct. They do not form friendships. They form alliances. They do not play for joy. They train. You watch a group of teenagers teaching younger kids how to stab with broken glass, how to climb walls, how to stay silent when hiding. They use dolls made from rags and trash bags, practicing how to strangle quietly. Laughter only comes when someone falls during the drill, not out of cruelty, but out of desensitization. They have never celebrated a birthday, never seen fireworks that were not explosions, never received a gift that did not have a blade attached to it. Their games are brutal, their rules non-existent. You pass a courtyard where children are playing hunter and prey. One child is bound to a pole, while the others take turns chasing, biting, and slapping him. There are no adults to stop them. No adult dares to. When the game is over, the child tied to the pole gets up and smiles. His bruises are badges. In this world, toughness is the only way to be noticed, respected, or allowed to survive. Education now exists only in fragments. Stories passed down orally, scavenged books read by flashlight, or half-remembered lessons from broken adults. But what these children learn more than anything is distrust. They are taught that adults will leave them, that promises are lies, that those who feed you today may steal from you tomorrow. Many are orphans. Others were abandoned by parents who could no longer protect them. You come across a group of children camped out in an old train station. They take turns standing guard while the others sleep. They share food with strict precision. One of them has kept a notebook filled with names of those they have lost. There are dozens of entries. Some are marked with question marks. One page simply says, "Mom left, did not return." They are not waiting for rescue. They do not believe in it. They do not fantasize about governments returning or order being restored. They do not dream of becoming astronauts or doctors or anything else once tied to a stable world. Their only ambition is survival. Some begin to form tribes of their own, with symbols, rituals, and initiation rites. A group in the Northeast calls itself the Newborns. They wear necklaces made from animal teeth and broken glass. Their rule is simple. Kill one adult who tries to control you, and you are welcomed in. You find their graffiti sprayed across walls, always with a handprint smeared in blood beside it. In other regions, child-led settlements mimic the very violence that once harmed them. They build hierarchies where the eldest rules with fists. Disobedience is punished quickly. You meet a boy, barely 15, who calls himself King Marrow. He commands a dozen followers, all armed with makeshift weapons. He lives in a rusted-out bus and executes anyone who disobeys. He once tried to form a council, he tells you, but they betrayed him. Now, he trusts only his own judgment. His throne is the torn front seat of the bus. His crown is a helmet filled with bullet holes. And yet, not all of them are monstrous. Some of these children cling desperately to the last shreds of humanity, even if they do not understand what it means. You meet a girl who collects broken toys from ruined houses. She arranges them carefully in a circle each night and sits among them, whispering stories she invents. No one else is allowed to touch them. This is her village, she says. These are her people. They do not hurt her, and she does not leave them. In her, there is still something soft, but it is fragile. You fear it will not last. Language itself is beginning to evolve. These children speak in fractured slang, a blend of pre-collapsed terms and new ones they have invented. Blue sky means safety. Red skin means enemy. Dust talk means false hope. Their voices are clipped, efficient. Emotion is weakness, so they strip it from their speech. They do not say please or thank you. They say need or done. When one of them dies, they say stopped and move on. Adults are terrified of them, not just because they are unpredictable, but because they are the first true products of this lawless world. They have never tasted structure, so they do not crave it. They do not mourn it. To them, the past is a story, the kind told to scare or entertain. Some even mock the old world. You hear a group of kids laughing at the idea of traffic lights, calling it the color game for sheep. One boy jokes that school must have been a prison. Another asks why people used to sit in lines to be told what to do. To them, authority is absurd. Obedience is suicide. You realize something more dangerous than violence is rising. A generation with no reference for peace. These children do not want to rebuild what was lost. They want to evolve into something else, something leaner, meaner, more brutal, and they are succeeding. Already, they are stronger than their parents were, quicker, more adaptable. They hunt, they fight, they scavenge, and they lead. The world they are creating is not a broken version of the old. It is a new species of civilization built on survival, speed, and silence. And if the world ever stabilizes, if some form of order ever tries to return, it will not be welcomed. These children will not bow. They will not trust peace. They will not trade their fire for comfort. They have been raised in a crucible of death and betrayal. And what has emerged is a generation that sees rules as myths and mercy as extinction. They are not broken, they are forged, and they are watching you. But while this new generation rises, the land itself begins to change. With no engineers to preserve it and no systems to tame it, nature returns, and it does not come back gently. It starts at the edges, like hairline cracks forming in a dam. Vines creep up the walls of one's mighty towers. Grass pushes through concrete with quiet determination. Trees sprout in parking lots and subway entrances. And then it spreads, slow at first, then faster than you expect. With no one left to prune, pave, or poison, Nature begins its return, not as a peaceful revival, but as a consuming force. The cities are not just decaying, they are being swallowed. You step into what was once a major downtown avenue. Skyscrapers lean slightly as their foundations soften from unchecked moisture and invasive roots. Ivy wraps around traffic lights, hanging from them like nooses. Elevators no longer run, but saplings have taken their place, rising through the shattered ceilings of abandoned lobbies. Wildflowers erupt through office carpeting. Bees nest inside what used to be security cameras. Birds perch on rusted window frames, singing songs no one answers. The distant sound of civilization, horns, engines, voices, is gone. Now, there is only wind, water, and the howl of animals claiming what was once stolen from them. You encounter your first bear near a collapsed overpass. It does not charge. It does not run. It simply stares, unafraid. The humans it once feared are mostly dead or hiding. Here, in this concrete jungle gone wild, it is you who is the intruder. Later, you see a pack of wild dogs trotting confidently down the street, their bodies lean, their eyes sharp. These are not pets, they are predators. Former domestication has vanished from their gait. They stop to sniff the air. One growls low. You back away before they decide you are worth chasing. With the loss of agriculture and pesticide use, animal populations boom unchecked. Rats travel in swarms, feeding on uncollected bodies and rotting waste. Crows gather in massive flocks above city plazas, their cries deafening as they descend to pick at refuse. In one park, you witness a deer give birth under a rusted playground structure. No one interrupts. She moves with confidence, glancing only briefly in your direction. She is safer here than you are. Nature has rewritten the hierarchy. Flooding becomes a constant threat. Without human maintenance, sewers clog with debris. Rainfall has nowhere to go, and rivers overflow into residential districts. Streets vanish beneath murky water. Mold eats away at everything: walls, furniture, skin. In the south, entire towns are now swamps. Alligators sun themselves on front porches. In the north, without working plows or salt treatments, snow buries towns to their rooftops. Winter comes hard, breaking what little remains of infrastructure. You find a frozen gas station encased in ice, its pumps buried, its windows shattered inward by storm winds. Inside, frozen figures remain huddled together beneath cardboard and insulation, never having made it to warmth. Abandoned suburbs are now forests with skeletons of houses poking through the trees. The absence of human activity has turned paved communities into green labyrinths. You enter one through what used to be a side gate. The sidewalk is barely visible beneath moss and fallen leaves. A squirrel runs along a power line that no longer carries electricity. A raccoon climbs the side of a house with a broken window and vanishes inside. Inside that house, vines have crept along every wall. The TV is covered in ivy. The floorboards are warped and brittle. A bird's nest sits inside the fireplace, complete with chirping hatchlings. You take a step and fall through the floor into a basement filled with mud. Crops grow wild in places once sterilized by concrete. You find tomatoes in alleyways, potatoes breaking through parking lots, corn erupting beside skyscrapers. But they are untended, unpredictable. Some are poisonous now, mutated by contaminated soil or nearby runoff. You watch someone eat what they thought was wild lettuce, only to fall writhing hours later. There are no food inspectors here. The forest does not explain what is safe. You pass what used to be a zoo. Its gates are open, its signs faded. The cages are empty. Some animals died when the food ran out. Others escaped. You see the bones of an elephant near a broken fence, its tusks long since scavenged. But not everything died. You catch a glimpse of a leopard stalking the edge of the brush, watching you from behind a fallen billboard that once advertised a luxury sedan. Later, you hear the distant roar of something that no longer belongs in your part of the world. In some places, people try to live with the wilderness. They build tree houses, forage instead of scavenge, raise goats and chickens where apartments used to stand. But the line between coexistence and conquest is thin. You find a commune in a half-sunken city block. They live among reeds and frogs, cooking fish over open fires, smiling like they have found peace. But their leader is missing an arm, bitten off by something they could not identify. They tell you it came at night, silent, fast, cold. They do not go out after dark anymore. Most of them no longer sleep indoors. The concrete sweats, the earth presses in. They say it dreams. Even plants grow strange now. With no herbicides, no trimming, invasive species have exploded. Kudzu, Japanese knotweed, water hyacinth, they choke lakes and swallow buildings. Entire streets are lined with thorns as thick as your wrist. Trees twist in unnatural shapes, roots appending pavement and cracking foundations. You find a school gymnasium filled with ferns, taller than men, growing in absolute silence. You realize that nature is not reclaiming the world in harmony. It is not restoring balance. It is purging your footprint. In the ruins of a once great museum, nature and history collide. Ivy climbs over ancient statues. Rain pours through the shattered dome, feeding moss that covers marble floors. Bones of ancient humans sit beside the bones of modern ones. A mammoth fossil and a looter lie side by side. In one exhibit room, a mural depicts the rise of civilization. Now it is faded, cracked, and overgrown. The message is clear. Nature waited. And now it does not just reclaim, it erases. You sleep that night inside the husk of an old commuter train. Trees have broken through the windows. The metal is rusted. You hear the chirping of insects, the fluttering of bats, the low rumble of something large walking in the distance. You hold your breath. You are not at the top of the food chain anymore. Out here, your technology means nothing. Your rules mean nothing. Your species is just one more animal trying to survive in a world that has already moved on. And in that moment, you realize something chilling. The earth is healing, not in the poetic way environmentalists once hoped for, but in the raw, merciless way of wild systems reclaiming space. You were not nature's partner, you were its infestation. And without your rules, your roads, your cities, your chemicals, and your electricity, nature is not only surviving, it is thriving. But as the wild reclaims the land and the earth resets itself, a few survivors begin to wonder, can something new be built in the ashes? Can order return? Some begin to try, but without trust or memory of peace, even attempts at rebuilding descend into chaos. You are about to witness the failure of human reinvention. It was inevitable. After the hunger, the blood, and the silence, someone would try to bring the world back. Not governments, not yet, but survivors, small groups, scattered across the wastelands of ruined cities and forests of concrete rot, who believe that maybe, just maybe, something better can be salvaged from the rubble. You begin to find them, not many, and never for long. These are the micro-societies, the hopeful experiments, and one by one you watch them fail. The first you come across is a circle of old teachers, retired civil servants, and once idealistic parents. They call their settlement Second Dawn, built in the bones of a public library. They still believe in structure. They have drawn up laws, handwritten on parchment, establishing roles, duties, and shared responsibilities. There is even a jury system, though no one has yet dared to be the defendant. They hold meetings every morning under the atrium, where sun pours in through shattered glass, and children sit cross-legged with sticks, pretending they are pencils. It almost feels real. You eat with them. You listen to their plans for education, for rebuilding energy, for mapping a path toward democracy. 3 days later, the water runs out. A nearby gang hears they are unarmed. They come in the night, silent and swift. The children are taken. The leaders are shot. The library is torched. When you return, you find only ashes and blood-soaked lesson plans fluttering in the wind. Their rule book lies open in a puddle. The first line still legible. All people are equal. You read it until the ink dissolves. Further south, you find the balance, a collective ruled by a strict meritocracy. Everyone earns their place through skill voted on monthly. The idea seems promising. The group grows crops, filters water, and even manufactures soap from animal fat. Their leader is a woman who once worked for the UN. She believes in order without tyranny. She greets you with cautious optimism, asks questions, records your observations. She wants to understand how others are rebuilding too, but something feels off. At night, the votes are whispered, not written. The same names rise every month. Those who challenge the status quo begin to disappear. You later discover a pit behind their settlement. Inside are the bodies of dissenters. Meritocracy, it seems, works only until merit becomes a threat to those in power. To the west, you discover the Concord, a society that has abolished leadership altogether. No titles, no hierarchies, no centralized rule. All decisions are made by unanimous vote. They say they are free from the oppression of the past. You watch as they spend 5 hours debating whether to allow a new family into their walls. The next day, a medical emergency goes unanswered because the group cannot reach a consensus about using their last vial of antibiotics. By week's end, infighting erupts between factions who interpret their guiding philosophy differently. They splinter, then spiral. The Concord dissolves into chaos. The family they debated admitting flees before they, too, are caught in the collapse. You begin to understand a hard truth. Survival requires authority, and authority invites corruption. Every attempt at peace, structure, or fairness must contend with fear, hunger, and trauma. Even those with noble intentions are forced to make compromises. You meet a man who once led a micronation of 50 people living in an old sports arena. He enforced curfews, organized cleanup efforts, and ran patrols. But when outsiders tried to steal food, he ordered his guards to shoot on sight. Then he executed a teenage thief from within their own ranks to set an example. The next morning, his second-in-command poisoned him. The arena was empty by nightfall. Another group, the Ledger, bases their society entirely on trade. They keep records on handmade tablets. Everything is accounted for: food, tools, labor, even emotional support. They treat kindness as a service to be paid. At first, it brings order. People know what they owe and what they earn, but soon debts grow. One man owes more than he can repay. He is sold to a nearby gang in exchange for ammunition. The woman who protested is fined for disrupting social harmony. Others follow her fate when they speak up. The ledger remains, but it is no longer a society. It is a bank with no forgiveness. In the colder north, you find Hearthpost, a commune that worships fire as both symbol and necessity. They sing hymns to flame, hold nightly vigils, and believe that by honoring heat and light, they will preserve the soul of civilization. They offer you shelter. You sit by the fire and listen to poetry recited from memory. For one night, you feel something close to comfort. But in the morning, the firekeeper discovers 2 logs missing. Accusations begin. Trials are held by fire. The accused are forced to hold burning embers. One does not scream. She is proclaimed innocent. The other wails. He is deemed a liar and cast out. The fire is stoked higher. The hymns grow louder. You leave before night falls again. Sometimes, micro-societies fall not from within, but from without. Raiders target them the moment they gain resources. Gangs hate order. Cults see structure as competition. Wilderness does not care about laws. Floods wash away carefully plotted settlements. Disease spreads through concentrated populations. Wildfires, sparked by lightning or sabotage, erase entire villages in hours. One town tried to build a wall of stacked cars. It slowed invaders for 3 minutes. You find the wall months later, rusted and overgrown, like a monument to human naivety. Not all experiments are large. Some are just pairs, trios, or families that tried to restore some sense of the old world. You come across a man who turned a greenhouse into a sanctuary. He grows food, reads stories aloud at dusk, and keeps a radio broadcasting lullabies. His wife was killed weeks ago. He does not speak of it. He keeps her photo on the table and her chair empty. He is kind. He offers you tomatoes. But one night, you wake to find his throat cut, his greenhouse torched. The photo is missing. The chair is overturned. The radio still plays. You begin to keep a list of the names of every community you encounter. You add a mark when they fall. Within 2 months, nearly all are marked. The list becomes too long. You burn it, not out of bitterness, but out of recognition. These attempts were not failures of morality or intelligence. They were failures of timing. The world is not ready for order yet. The pain is still too fresh. The violence too easy. Trust has not grown back. Memory still stings. You speak with an elder who lives alone in a cave. He used to be a historian. He tells you this is the 3rd collapse he has lived through, not globally, but locally. He saw his home fall, his town burn, his community devour itself. He tried to rebuild twice. Now he watches. He says, order is not something you can plant in poisoned soil. It takes generations. You ask what we are supposed to do in the meantime. He says nothing. Then he closes his eyes and whispers, survive. But among the ashes and the ghosts of broken attempts, a final flicker of hope begins to stir. Hidden deep within the wilderness, far from the eyes of raiders and the mouths of the desperate, the last strongholds of humanity begin to form. But even these sanctuaries come with a cost. You reach them not by road, but by rumors, whispers, carried between scavengers and nomads, half myth and half memory. They speak of places where order has been reborn, not as fragile micro-societies, but as hardened strongholds, bastions of security, hidden behind fortifications so thick even sound struggles to pass through. They are not easy to find, and those who seek them are rarely welcomed, but you are persistent. You are a witness. And when you finally arrive at the gates of one, you realize the old world did not return. Something new took its place, something colder, more calculated, and far more efficient. The first is simply called Crown. It sits atop a mountain plateau, ringed by motion sensors and machine gun turrets rigged with solar panels. The wall is 3 layers thick, made from repurposed shipping containers, steel sheets, and reinforced concrete scavenged from old bunkers. Entry is not requested, it is earned. You wait outside for 2 days before they speak to you through an intercom, asking 3 questions: your skills, your knowledge of rule structures, and your willingness to follow commands without exception. You answer carefully. They test your pulse remotely to detect lies. Finally, the gate opens just enough to allow 1 person through. You step into another world. Inside, the rules are visible everywhere. Posters with commandments hang from every wall. Curfews are enforced with shock collars for newcomers. Surveillance drones circle overhead 24 hours a day. The air is clean, the water filtered, the electricity stable. Hydroponic farms feed hundreds. Everyone wears a numbered badge. You are scanned wherever you go. Cameras follow your every move. There is no laughter, no small talk. People work in silence, sleep in assigned shifts, speak only when addressed. Crown has survived, not by kindness, but by total control. Their leader is never seen, only heard. A voice over speakers.com, male, without inflection. They call him the architect. Whether he is real or artificial is debated. Orders come through terminals. Punishments are swift. Disobedience is met with expulsion, which here means exile beyond the perimeter without supplies. No one returns. Yet, despite the fear, Crown thrives. Children attend lessons. Weapons are stored in locked vaults, issued only when sanctioned. Medical teams operate in shifts with strict schedules. There is no chaos here, only order. You speak with a teacher named Anna. She says the architect saved them, that his rules feel like prison walls, but walls that keep the monsters out. She once lived in the city ruins and watched her brother bleed to death over a flashlight. She says this life is better, safe, predictable. Freedom, she tells you, is what got us killed the first time. Elsewhere, far underground, in what used to be a decommissioned missile silo, another stronghold thrives, the Root. It is a society of engineers, survivalists, and former intelligence operatives. Here, order is based on logic, skill, and lineage. They operate like a machine, each person a cog in a perfectly tuned system. Entry is based on aptitude tests and biometric scans. Once accepted, you are never allowed to leave. Everything is tracked. Sleep cycles, calorie intake, stress levels. They believe in optimization, not empathy. The Root has no government in the traditional sense. It is governed by a decentralized AI system called Vera, which monitors every metric and assigns tasks accordingly. Vera decides who eats what, who sleeps when, who reproduces, and with whom. Reproduction is not a right, it is scheduled and approved based on genetic compatibility and psychological resilience. Children are born in sterile environments, raised in pods until age 5, then assigned to mentors. Emotional attachment is discouraged. They believe it clouds judgment. love, in the root, is obsolete. You interview a maintenance worker. He tells you he has not spoken with his biological parents in years. He says Vera reassigned them to different sectors based on workload. He shrugs when you ask if he misses them. We are not here to feel, he says. We are here to last. In the frozen north, you encounter Aegis, a mobile fortress built into a refitted aircraft carrier that navigates inland rivers and flooded coastlines. It is a military stronghold led by former Special Forces commanders who enforce their rule through absolute discipline and tactical superiority. Their flag is black and silver, their anthem a wordless rhythm of drums. Every member is assigned a rank. Disobedience results in public punishment, but unlike Crown or the Root, Aegis trains its people not to be passive followers, but hardened warriors. Children as young as 7 drill with wooden rifles. Teenagers lead patrols. Elders train the next generation in guerrilla tactics and combat survival. Aegis believes the world will never be safe again, and so it must remain ready for war at all times. They are expanding, slowly, methodically. Outposts are being built, settlements liberated. You hear their motto etched into walls. Peace is a lie. Only vigilance survives. One commander tells you they will retake the continent one block at a time, that in a few decades they will be the new government. You ask what happens to those who resist. He smiles and replies, they become history. Each of these strongholds has one thing in common. They are not rebuilding the old world. They are building something new, born of the lessons burned into them by collapse. Democracy is gone. So is individual freedom. In their place, precision, submission, and survival have become virtues. They are not interested in fairness, but in endurance. They do not mourn the past. They are designing a future that does not fail the way the last one did. And yet, not all is unified. These strongholds distrust one another. Crown considers Aegis too aggressive. The Root believes Crown is weak for allowing human emotion. Aegis mocks them both for their cowardice. There are whispers of eventual conflict, of ideology versus ideology. These may be the seeds of the next civilization, or the first sparks of the next war. Either way, you know now that if the world is to be ruled again, it will not be by politicians or philosophers. It will be by those who mastered the collapse. As you leave the last stronghold and begin your return journey, you realize this. The people inside these walls are alive, yes, but not truly free. Their hearts beat under the weight of surveillance, structure, and fear. But outside the walls, the wild still reigns. Chaos thrives. Death is everywhere. The trade is clear. Safety now comes at the cost of soul. You have seen the fall, the fight, the ruin, and the rise. You have walked through the dust of what used to be law and order. Now, as your mission ends, there is one last truth you must face. In a world without rules and government, you would not survive. You return to where your journey began, not through cities or wilderness or strongholds, but within your own mind-carrying memories, etched in fire, blood, and silence. You have seen the shape of a world without governments, a world stripped of laws, boundaries, and structure. And you now understand what few ever dare to admit, that civilization is not natural. It is fragile. It is maintained, not guaranteed. And when it dies fast. You saw the cities crumble under the weight of unfiltered human instinct. You watched water turn to poison, food vanish into theft, and violence replace currency. You walked beside those who turned on family, abandoned children, and murdered for a whisper of safety. You met the children of chaos, raised without kindness, born without innocence. You witnessed the rise of false gods and fractured ideologies, the failure of hopeful communities, and the birth of new empires carved from fear. The absence of government did not lead to utopia. It led to a raw, predatory existence where empathy meant death and rules meant weakness. Even in the few places where structure returned, it came wrapped in chains. Surveillance, obedience, elimination of choice. These were the pillars of the new order. They did not rebuild what was lost. They buried it and wrote something harsher in its place. You now know that freedom, in its purest form, is unbearable. Without limits, we fall. Without leadership, we fracture. And without accountability, we consume each other. The great lie of collapse fiction is that humanity always rises. The truth is more brutal. Most of us do not rise, we rot. You remove your recording device. You review your footage. And as you prepare to return to your own time, to a world still held together by law and imperfect leadership, one question burns inside your chest like a second heartbeat. If the collapse begins tomorrow, would you be ready to choose between freedom and survival? Because in this world you just witnessed, one truth repeats louder than gunfire or screams. You would not survive a world without rules. If you were dropped into this lawless world, what would you do first? Would you seek others? Would you try to rebuild? Or would you become the predator before someone made you prey? Let us know your answer in the comments. Your perspective might be someone's future strategy. If this scenario made you think differently about what keeps society together, hit the like button. Share this video with someone who thinks they would thrive in total freedom. And if you want to explore even darker, deeper, or more mind-bending realities, subscribe for more high-stakes journeys through the impossible. This has been the Altered Ripple Effect. And remember, survival is not about strength. It is about the structure we dare to take for granted.